Okay, this is the replacing missing keys section of the restoring a Casio SK-1. These keyboards are, and many other keyboards that use these little tiny baby key beds, are notorious for the keys coming loose and eventually breaking off. And then if you find one in a thrift store or buy one used or whatever, oftentimes they're actually missing keys. There's a million ways to do this, but I have crafted a way where I have carved. Here's two that I replaced, and I'm going to kind of show you what I did to do that. Carved new ones out of wood and built a little activation system for them. The wood that I used, and I'm assuming you're smart enough to know how to cut and carve a piece of wood so that it fits in that little rectangle. I just used wooden shims and just cut them up and then kind of buffed them to sort of look like a key and spray painted them black. But the important part is the activation system. You want them, they're epoxied back into, let me get a better pointer. They're epoxied back into this top groove there. Let's see if we can see it better. When you're missing a key, there's a bottom groove there and then a top groove. That's where we're gonna be putting our little bendy plastic activation system. Here's one that is made already. It is a piece of 1 millimeter thick plastic sheeting that you can get at any craft store, and a rubber grommet that's about 8 millimeters wide. That's what they look like. Basically, a rubber grommet that is gonna be big enough to push down that little rubber trigger, but small enough that it goes in that circle. Really, you just want to, that thing pooches up above here. You just want to press that in. So I glued the rubber grommet onto the plastic sheet so that when I fit it into that top groove, it sets right on top. Oh, I gotta see, it's not, hold on. It's not epoxied in there yet. Okay, so that it sets right over that little rubber button. And you want to do that first. You want to cut the plastic first, lay it in there, center exactly where the grommet should be glued so that it sets right over this button, and then glue it to your plastic sheeting. Have that all ready. And then the next thing is to carve a little key. Get it out of wood, leave the bottom unpainted. You tuck your plastic and definitely always test before epoxying anything. And I'm using my favorite epoxy is JB Weld Clear Weld Quick Set epoxy. I use it for freaking everything. I think it's got to go into the top slot. That's the last thing you're going to do. And just to test it, we'll put our key on there, which is going to get epoxy to it. And it bounces right back up. So, let's see, pull this out. The next thing that I'm going to do, that I'm not going to make you literally watch glue dry, is epoxy the key onto there. I'll put 3 little dots of epoxy there, and the key will go all the way up to the very front of this. So when it's on there and it's glued, you will have, let me show you. Sorry about this. Everybody's got fancy graphics and editing in their YouTube videos, and I'm a freaking moron. So at the end, that's the front of your key right there. The back, you've still got that little piece sticking out. That's the piece that goes into that top slot that you're gonna epoxy at the end. So get the key all fully. That should go all the way to the front, right to the front. So you've got just enough sticking out. It's gonna go in there. Get those glued together, and then when that is set, usually this stuff, before I really mess around with it, I usually wait like at least 4 or 5 hours. The last thing you're going to do is put some epoxy on this tip there. I usually put it on the underside and wait till the epoxy, it's 2-part epoxy, mix it together and wait for it to get kind of thick right before it's set, so that your work time is a little bit quicker, because you don't want to be dripping epoxy down anywhere near these keys and stick that button down permanently or whatever. But mix the epoxy, get it good and thick, and when it's ready to go, just kind of put it on the very, very edge and the underside of that plastic and jam it in there and just let her set there overnight. You definitely don't want to fuck with this while that epoxy is drying, because what you want is for that epoxy to set in there, and it's really it's barely moving that plastic up and down, and that epoxy will keep this thing set in there so the key doesn't pop out and fly out. And you're just barely moving that a couple millimeters down to press the little rubber button down, that little rubber button. All right. I hope that wasn't too convoluted, but that's my method for creating new wooden keys for the Casio SK-1. All righty. On to the races.